I'm Jim,
And I'm Garrett.
and this is
Jim
Jim
and
and
Garrett.
Garrett at the movies. We are back after a little hiatus, unexpected hiatus. Well, a little bit expected hiatus. Garrett, how's the new place?
It's a lot of work. I just bought a house and had to move, and it was hectic and stressful, and continues to be. But I do love the place. I don't love my new commute, but I love the house, so it's good to be here.
Well, congratulations, Garrett. Congratulations on the move. Congratulations on the house purchase. I know that when I first bought my house, there were several times when I would stand up on my roof like the character in A Serious Man and say, "This is all mine now." And so if you haven't done that yet, then you're not housing right.
I actually can't stand on my roof. The angle is way too steep on this.
Oh,
But I do think that we've officially alienated every single millennial by admitting that we both own houses. They just respect
oh.
the shit out of us for that now.
Yeah, that's right. Oh no, half our audience is gone.
Yeah.
Sorry. Bye. Well, welcome, you one person who still remains. No. So yes, let's get to the actual show introduction instead of talking about our quiet suburban lives. We have a movie about a quiet suburban life. This is A Simple Favor. It stars the great, the wonderful Anna Kendrick and the great, the wonderful Blake Lively, co-starring Henry Golding and Andrew Rannells, who's those of you who are Broadway fans, you might enjoy him. Directed by Paul Feig. This is the story of Stephanie, who's a parenting vlogger who befriends a mysterious woman named Emily, and a plot ensues after Emily's mysterious disappearance. So I will let's start with you, Garrett. What did you think about this film?
This film is a movie that seems like someone took it from something that they knew I would like, took it in a direction that was risky as hell, and somehow it all managed to pay off.
Oh wow.
I thought this was a great film. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I enjoyed the fact that all of the elements seemed to work. It is simultaneously a drama, a comedy, and a crime story and a mystery. It's not without its shortcomings. There's certainly points of critique, which we can get into later. But overall, I was so surprised to see, a darker take on Paul Feig that still felt like a Paul Feig movie, and I generally like Paul Feig movies. So somehow this is something where all sorts of things could have gone wrong, and on the whole, they went right. So I was very pleased.
That's interesting. For me, all sorts of things did go wrong. I did not. I was. I'm down on this movie, mainly for its tonal inconsistencies. You talk about all of the balls that is juggling at the same time, that is trying to keep in the air, and I'm not sure that it keeps all of those balls in the air at the same time. I think that if I were to go back and look at let's put it this way: as I was watching it, I thought that the murder mystery element of this film didn't fully track, especially at the ending reveal, which really didn't surprise me. So if we contrast with this with something like Searching, where that was a film that was ahead of me pretty much the whole way, this is a film that I was waiting for them to get to the reveal that I knew was coming. What is more, I think that some of the comedy didn't really work for me. I didn't laugh too much at this film. I didn't find it all that funny. I thought a lot of the performances and a lot of the characters and a lot of the comedy was the word that's coming to my head is cloying. It was not it didn't really work for me. So yeah, and there's one other thing that I'll get to later, but I'll give you a chance to tell me how wrong I am.
I don't necessarily think you're wrong. I mean, again, if I were to criticize anything on the macro level, tonal inconsistency isn't definitely, I think, a fair criticism. There's a sense in which, and if you wanted to be critical of it, you could say the film doesn't really know what kind of film it wants to be. It wants to be a comedy and it wants to be a mystery. and those two elements do conflict with each other at various points throughout the film. Uh, that having been said, as you noted, Anna Kendrick, I think, could solve the national energy crisis just on her adorableness. She just, and every time she's on screen in anything. I mean, again, it's somewhat unfortunate because I have difficulty seeing Anna Kendrick as anything other than Anna Kendrick, but she is just so fantastically charismatic that that's not generally a problem. There were a few moments in this film, though, I think, where she went in directions I'd never seen her go before as an actor, which were in some ways kind of risky and interesting. But they were definitely sort of more momentary rather than in terms of the overarching direction that her character took. As far as Blake Lively is concerned, I actually realized I didn't really recognize her from anything. I mean, I know I've seen at least a few movies she's been in, but I couldn't remember her in any of them. But I thought she was fantastic in this, and in particular, I think the contrast between the two characters and the chemistry that they had was a recipe both for drama and for humor. And on the whole, like I say, I think that when it was going deliberately in one direction, it worked, and it had sometimes a difficulty shifting gears, but once it got into the other gear, it worked in that direction.
Well, it's clear that you're not a Gossip Girl fan,
I am not.
because that is where Blake Lively sort of captured America's heart. I'm not a watcher of Gossip Girl, but I certainly that's where I first saw her, and she's also Cafe Society, The Shallows. I'm sorry, and here in the Simple Favor. I think she's also known for her fantastic marriage to Ryan Reynolds. I think their trolling of each other on the internet is something as hashtag relationship goals for everybody. The one thing that I wanted to mention that I felt even more ambivalence about was the way suburban life in A Simple Favor is depicted. Suburban life is never, it's always negative in films, and in this film it's no different. There's a group of people in this film who believe that the day-to-day workings of suburban life are so very important, and they gossip like a sewing circle. It's really quite, that's where I get the cloying nature of this film from. That's where I get that criticism from, and I find that to be true about most depictions of suburban life in film. There's almost never a positive depiction of living in the suburbs, and I find that to be too easy and too it's a theme and a criticism that's been repeated over and over again, that when I saw it again in A Simple Favor, it ended up feeling cliche and hackneyed for me.
Again, I think the antidote to that is precisely Anna Kendrick. I mean, you're certainly right that Blake Lively's character shits all over the suburbs. And, for the first act, at least, when we're sort of introduced to her as this, exotic and, almost force of nature type character that's just coming in and disrupting everything. Yeah, it definitely depicts the suburbs as provincial and small-minded and petty, and you have this sort of highfalutin New York City, who was where it's really at, and that's where she wants to be. And because Anna Kendrick is kind of sort of in some ways looking up to Blake Lively, the film sort of takes that perspective. But by the time you get to the end, and no spoilers, but I think that perspective is thoroughly reversed, and I think by the time you get to the end, Anna Kendrick is sort of has gone through her character arc. You sort of look back with a different perspective. That is, I don't know if I'd necessarily say
not a positive portrayal. I think we as the audience are supposed to look down on all these little people, and Anna Kendrick's character with her little vlog that she thinks is going to be so important, and it's kind of, I think we're supposed to laugh at it. There's almost a cynical view of those characters that isn't redeemed by the end of the film for me.
It's hard for me to imagine anyone looking down on Anna Kendrick in any way. I mean, Yeah, again, she does not have the sort of stately stature that Blake Lively's character has. You know,
Sure.
she is very much a sort of, you know, Blake Lively's a stereotypical sort of New York a city kind of girl, whereas Anna Kendrick is very much the sort of, you know, the suburban mom type. But you know,
Suburban mom with ambitions outside, like she desperately wants to be Blake Lively's friend. Like that's the central conflict of the first act is, oh, please love me.
I think that's she just wants to be Blake Lively's friend, but that's because and again I think the film does this rather nicely. That she's desperately lonely. You know, she's you know, a widow at the start of the film. She has no real friends. She just wants to connect with somebody, and Blake Lively is the first person in a long time that she makes any kind of connection to.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, there's something, admittedly, that's kind of, you know, pathetic about that. But again, that's in the beginning of the film. I think by the end, she overcomes that and sort of comes into her own self and sees her own self-worth and her own value and gets strength through that. And I think by the end, it is a sort of, you know, her character is, you know, a you know, proud, successful, interesting, compelling character. And that's kind of what you want out of a film.
I don't want to respond to that because I'm afraid of spoilers.
Okay.
But suffice it to those of you who are listening and watching, you've heard both of our perspectives. I think this might be one of those reviews, like the old Siskel and Ebert days, when one would give it a thumbs up and the other would give it a thumbs down. I would be like, oh well, that was completely unhelpful. So I think we were just completely unhelpful to to a lot of. Is there anything else that you want to mention about this movie?
Yeah, I mean, I will say a few critiques. Like I noted, the tonal inconsistency I think is a fair criticism. And again, it's strange. It's a strange film for Paul Feig. You know, it still felt like a Paul Feig film in spite of the fact that it's not his traditional fare. But as you mentioned, yeah, I saw the final reveal coming. You know, it was not a long ways away. I wasn't surprised by that, but I still enjoyed going along for the ride anyway. And the, you know, the denouement, not just the third act, but, you know, the sort of the last couple of minutes of the action in the third act was very poorly executed. I felt, you know, it felt rushed, you know, sort of slapped together, and a disappointing, you know, conclusion to an otherwise well executed film. So those were critiques. One of the shout though, Henry Golding as an actor I hadn't seen before. I missed. I've not seen Crazy Rich Asians, which I guess he's also in. But I thought he was good. I was pleased by his performance of, which again had to strike a very particular balance in order to do the thing that it needed to do, and I think he struck it well.
Yeah, I liked Henry Golding. I liked Blake Lively, and I liked most of Anna Kendrick's part. But yeah, it didn't overall it didn't hold together for me. I give this a 2 out of 5 rating, which is short of a recommend for me. What about you, Garrett?
I give it 3.5 out of 5.
3.5. So that's a recommend.
Yes.
My recommend line is 3 stars and above are recommends. So that's all right. Well, there you have it. We'll move on to our movie club entry that all of you have seen because we definitely told you to go see it beforehand. Joking, of course. Some of you are hopefully wondering. Hopefully you got to see Serpico and you enjoyed it. We'll talk about that maybe some other time in the future. But our movie club entry today will be Les Diaboliques, or it is now, as it's now referred to as simply Diabolique. This is we're going to talk about the real version, the 1955 version. The 1996 version pretty much sucks. This is directed by Henri-Georges Clouzot. It stars Simone Signoret. I think I mispronounced that, but I'm gonna pretend I didn't and soldier on. Vera Clouzot and Paul Meurice. This is the story of 2 women, similar to Simple Favor. 2 women who hatch a plan to murder one's husband, the other's, I guess, what's the male form of mistress? Is it Mister? Um, murder. So the one woman is having an affair with another woman's husband, and they both decide to hatch a plan to murder him. And well, we'll see what happens. Well, actually, since we can talk about spoilers and movie clubs, and they end up not getting away with it. This is one of the best noir films of one of the best noir eras in recent in film history, and it's one of the best French noir films. Garrett, what did you think about this film? You're muted, I believe.
Thank you.
There you go.
This is a film I saw originally, I think, when I was in high school, and I haven't seen it since. So it's been a long time. I never saw the remake, but I saw the original right around the time the remake came out. And so I remembered liking it very much. I went into it with higher expectations. This time around, though, the flaws of the film jumped out to me a lot more than the first time. While I mean, again, the core strength of it, the central mystery is a great one. The plot and the story is definitely well constructed. That is clearly the highlight. I felt that the editing was a drag. The pacing definitely lagged way too much. You could easily cut out probably 20 minutes to a half hour and not lose any important plot points, and at the same time still sort of keep the slow burn feel that the film is going for. I also felt that the performances were a little flat. They did not, I think, sort of raise to the level of the drama that the subject matter called for. So again, it's obviously an influential film. The reason why I wanted to talk about it is precisely because it's name dropped in A Simple Favor. So I thought it would be nice to sort of come back and revisit it accordingly. And as we talked when we talked about Modern Times a few weeks back, I tried to sort of view it with two different lenses: a modern lens and a of the time lens. So it's another film I think that is no doubt would have been much more compelling if it was more compelling when I saw it when I was younger, and probably would have been more compelling still if I'd saw it in 1955 when it was released. But I feel that many parts of it did not age quite as well as one would hope.
Yeah, it was very similar to A Simple Favor, because this is the tense drama mystery that Simple Favor is telling without the comedic elements. There's almost no comic relief in this film, with the exception of the young boy who's made to stand in the corner when he sees things that turn out to be right, but for the other characters, for the adult characters are impossible. I think that's the only comic element of the film. Everything else is intensely serious and intensely, like, it's building up that mood. And I think the first time I saw this film, I saw it after I saw the 96 version. I hated the 96 version, but I kept hearing how awesome the original was, so I figured I'd check out the original. And yeah, I think because I think this is a one-time viewing. I think you see this film once and go into it not knowing anything about it, and get taken by the mystery, get taken by the noir aspects of it, enjoy the hell out of it. And once you return to it, you're gonna see that some of the shine has worn off of it. I still think it's a film that creates a mood really well, and it's got a good story to match. So for me, this film still it works from a technical craft standpoint. Emotionally, the second time viewing it, actually the third time seeing the story, because I saw it 96, or I saw the 96 version, I saw the 55 version, and then now it's 2018. I see the 55 version again. So this is like the third time visiting the story. I knew the ending, like I knew what was going on. And so its craft didn't work as well on me this time. But when I first saw it, I really liked it.
One interesting sort of historical side note, which I
Right.
did when I was researching a little bit, I found out, French film, 1955. My mind automatically goes to, what did Jean-Paul Sartre think of it? Um, and I was unable to find any sort of direct commentary or criticism on the film from Sartre, but I did find out that the director, Clouzot, or however it's pronounced, apparently got in some legal trouble after World War II. He was accused of collaboration with the enemy and was banned from making films for 4 years. And Jean-Paul Sartre, along with Simone de Beauvoir and several other prominent intellectuals, wrote letters in his defense, saying that the sentence was unfair and calling it for it to be repealed. So obviously Sartre was familiar with his work, and presumably appreciated it or liked it. So I thought that was an interesting note.
Well, this is his follow up to his big international success, and that was The Wages of Fear, which was I think also remade into an American film. I think in the 70s. I could be mistaken about that, but Wages of Fear came out in 53, and I think they did an American remake in the 70s. I could be mistaken about that, so don't quote me about that. But that film is fantastic. That's a really tense film because it's about four people who are required to transport nitroglycerin. So basically, if there's any sort of jostling in these old, jalopy kind of trucks, they're all gonna blow up, and they have to go across bridges and all kinds of shit, and it's really tense. Wages of Fear is the one previous to this. So I think right after there is a sort of break in his IMDb, and that must be when he was in trouble. But yeah, it's he's a good filmmaker as it comes to tension and environment. Almost a horror film atmosphere. There's a break I'm seeing in his IMDb from 43 to 47 that might be what you're referring
Yes,
to.
I think
So,
so.
what do you give this out of? Any other things before we wrap up our ratings on this and move on to our news?
Yeah, I know a few quick criticisms again to sort of unpack my point about the editing. A quick
Yeah,
example: there was a scene in which one of the characters goes to the morgue to see if it's her husband's body in the morgue, and they call up the body, and the camera shows the orderlies taking the coffin out of the freezer and then putting it on the elevator, then going up the elevator, then taking it through the hall. You don't
yeah,
need any of those shots.
yeah.
You can remove all of that and just show the coffin showing up with the wife. And it's probably a good at least 45 seconds that we're just sort of following this coffin up. And I was trying to see, is there some sort of thematic purpose for this? I mean, it's I guess they're trying to build tension, which was another thing which I thought was sort of strange and an interesting choice. There was no music in this film.
Right.
It's sort of traditional, in many noir films to use music and many films in general to sort of ratchet up the tension, to set the tone. And I'm assuming it was a deliberate choice to use no soundtrack at all. And I kept thinking this time around, some music probably would help. It probably would have upped the ante and got me a little more emotionally invested, a little more on edge.
I think it's banking on that one image of the guy rising out of the table with the white eyes as it's well, that's the most iconic shot from this film. And it's copied again in the 96 version. Yeah, that's what I call Lawrence of Arabia editing. As I was watching Lawrence of Arabia, I was like, oh, give me the scissors on this film. I'll be able to trim this down and not lose anything, because there are scenes in Lawrence of Arabia where you see somebody way off in the distance and you watch them ride a horse all the way up, instead of doing what we would do now, is see somebody way in the distance, cut to a reaction shot, and then cut back and the guy is quite closer. and almost unreasonably closer. It's almost reminder of that bit in Monty Python and the Holy Grail where we see Lancelot running and he's far away. We see the reaction shot, the running far away again. Yeah, but those interesting film tricks, editing tricks, are ways to cut down the runtime and still kind of solve that problem.
And to a certain extent, of course, that those techniques have to be developed over time, and maybe they simply hadn't quite been developed at the time in which this film was made, and so you don't want to criticize it too harshly. But at the same time, really feels like it probably wouldn't have been that much of a challenge just to trim at least some of the fat.
Yeah.
One other criticism on the point, really quickly. The two women come up with a fairly straightforward plot to kill the husband, and then in the final reveal, we find out that the husband and the mistress came up with a ridiculously convoluted plot to kill the wife. If you're gonna kill someone, why not just do it the same way that you had with your original plan?
Yeah, that's I know, eye rolls. But noir's got a noir, yo.
Yeah, noir's got a noir. Noir's gonna noir.
All right, let's okay, so I'm giving this 3.5, 5, 3.5 or 4. I don't know, 4. I'll go 4. I'll go 4 for its historic importance.
Yeah, I'm going to do my same sort of split review. I think, from contemporary eyes, I would give it a 2, but from sort of, a 1955 lens, or maybe 18-year-old me lens, I would give it a 3.5. So sort of split the difference at about 2.5.
That's fair. Still recommend for me, and if you're a noir completionist, this is a film to include. Especially, like this is foreign noir. This is one of the classics. Let's move on to our news items. All right, so James Gunn is now set to write and possibly direct, according to Deadline, Suicide Squad 2. He moves from the Marvel Cinematic Universe to what has been dubbed in popular journalism, but though never confirmed by the studio, as the DCEU. So what do you think about this, Garrett? What do you think about James Gunn helming the follow-up to the Academy Award-winning Suicide Squad?
This was a shock to me. I just found out about it before we started streaming today when you mentioned it to me. So I know none of the details. I honestly don't know what to make of it, because on the one hand, I think that James Gunn is an excellent director. Both Guardians of the Galaxy movies were solid. From the point of view of the studio, I think this is absolutely a brilliant move, because they've made just a bunch of shit films, and so bring in some real talent and maybe they can mix things up. I mean, I think really how many was there's 5, 6 films in the DCEU at this point, and only one of them, Wonder Woman, is any good. Yeah, I mean, Suicide Squad was just awful. The first one was just absolutely fucking terrible in just about every conceivable way. It was so bad. I honestly have difficulty seeing how even someone of James Gunn's caliber can actually salvage it. I hope he's given a lot of creative leeway,
Yes.
and allowed to, if possible, even retcon the first film and throw out a lot of the crap that was crap, but possibly do some serious recasting even. So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting move. There's shy of maybe someone like Joss Whedon or something like that taking over the reins. There's probably little more that someone could do to actually make me go, well, maybe Suicide Squad 2 actually will be pretty good. But this has done it, so cheers to the studio.
Yeah, cheers to the studio, and also like I would give James Gunn Joss Whedon like leeway as it comes to reforming the DCEU. There are rumors abound about how they're going to try to reboot it with Flashpoint, how they're going to try to uh, not fire, but not renew Henry Cavill's Superman and reform it around different characters. All of those sound interesting. I would kind of like to see James Gunn take a Joss Whedon in MCU Phase 2 kind of role, because Joss Whedon was sort of second to Kevin Feige in forming the Avengers and Avengers Age of Ultron, and that whole MCU Phase 2 era, and I would like to see James Gunn take on that kind of role at Warner Brothers. I think he would be good at it. I think actually James Gunn is he loves the material. He loves comic books. He loves this kind of thing. And Suicide Squad, as nasty and awful as it was, it it could use some of that James Gunn humor. It could use some of James Gunn's irreverence, and it could use some of James Gunn's thematic relevance. I think James Gunn had the ability in both Guardians films to say something interesting, to say something artistic and interesting, and do it within a comic book genre. And I'd kind of like to see how he takes on this role. So yeah, I agree with you. I think this is a good move on the studio, and I think it's a good move on James Gunn's part too. As a career move, where do you go after you get fired from Marvel? You go to DC, and then you kick Marvel's ass, or at least try to.
Yeah, no, I gotta disagree with that last part. I think that James Gunn should have taken the blank check he could have gotten from almost any studio and done a passion project of his own, something he wanted that was all him, fresh from the start. I'm a was a somewhat comic fan, not certainly not the hugest one by any stretch of the imagination, but enough to know the source material. And the problem with it's easy to criticize the DCEU for being bad films, but to be honest, it's because it's got bad source material. I mean, there's very little of good in the DC comics material. I mean, there's Batman. Batman's definitely the shining star in the DC constellation. But other than that, I mean, again, maybe their backbench is pretty good. Again, I never got deep enough to really know, some of these other characters. I do think that Harley Quinn as a character actually was pretty interesting, but they completely fucked her up in the first Suicide Squad, and I can't imagine that they're going to be able to undo that. So yeah, I mean, and Joker's definitely a fascinating character, but now that we've got was it like 6 different fucking Jokers in the last decade?
Well, Joaquin Phoenix is the current Joker, and they're doing a Joker origin story with
topic for another day. But god damn, talk about saturating your fucking markets and just confusing shit up. It's almost like Sherlock. It gets to the point where even people who like the properties are gonna be just confused, and at least I am. I suppose maybe I can't speak for other people, but god damn it, I don't want 12 different Jokers. I don't want 6 different Batmans or 6 different Spider-Mans all playing around in the same time. Give it some goddamn breathing room. But all that having been said, the DCEU definitely needs a hard reboot, and maybe James Gunn can be the man to pull that off. They have to do something really, really different than what they've been doing for the last 5-6 years or so. James Gunn is probably better suited for that than anyone else. So.
That's fair. Yep. Yeah, I do think that you probably pissed off most DC fanboys between this and you don't like Superman as a character.
Superman is one of the most boring characters in all of comic fandom.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I would hide your DMs, man.
Yeah. No, I mean, see, here's the thing. Clark Kent is actually an interesting character.
Yeah.
Clark Kent can be pretty compelling. And the way to make Superman work is to have a good juxtaposition between Clark Kent and Superman, but you didn't have that in any of the current DCU films. So
I would pitch a Clark Kent rom-com if I could, but that's probably we could do that maybe next episode. We'll pitch a Clark Kent rom-com. But yeah, okay. So let's close this up. Yeah, I think it's good news for both James Gunn and Warner. We'll see how it shakes out, and this is kind of I don't know. James Gunn might have successfully made a comeback after his late unfortunateness. All right, so that's it. Let's see. Next episode, we are going to take another couple weeks off, another week off rather. Our next episode will be on October 23rd, where we will be reviewing Bad Times at the El Royale, or at El Royale. And our movie club entry will be Go. That is available on Hulu, so we hope you check that out and talk about it with us in the comments below. So that's it. I'm Jim.
And I'm Garrett.
And this has been
Jim
and
Garrett
Garrett at the movies. Good night.
Good night, everybody.